Okay, so next up we've got Tamiya's XF71, which is their interior green, which is pretty much a good colour. So what we're going to do is just spray this lightly down in. And what I want to do is make quite a thin mix, because what we're trying to do here is let that pre-shading, the black, show through. So just gently blow this in everywhere. So we're not going to let it cover the black totally. So it gives it, you can probably see it in there, that sort of grimy green look, because in a moment we're going to come back and lighten it. Now it's important to get in from all the angles with this one. Do your best to get in everywhere, but there we go, that shows you just in there, just like that, just like so. Okay, and same with this. We're going to do the whole instrument panel, and I say, because we've drilled out for these LEDs, it's quite handy because it gives us ways of holding this. Alright, so we can just come in the bottom here, because we'll pick it all out afterwards individually. So this will just act as a primer for everywhere else. Obviously we're going to go around and pick all of this lot out a little bit later on. But as you can see there, it just gives us that grime, dirt effect going along under there. So that's that one. To stand up. Okay, same with these side panels in the same way. So we can have fun going around, picking out all the details. Of the wiring and everywhere like that, but I think you agree, it just gives it nice. But that black will really help just break up it being just grey inside, and that's what we're going to try and do with this entire model, is break it up, make it look and have the feel of it being used, worn. And just when you spray, make sure you come in from all the angles. Just like so. I've just got this rear one. And make sure you get right in around this rear bulkhead with every direction. Just like so. So we've just got a couple of fingerprint areas just to fill in. There's that one. Okay, so that's those bits done. So now what we're going to do is just going to add a little bit of flat white into the mix. So we just pull you out a second. Okay, so we just take a brush. Okay, a bit of a brush full into the mix, and you should be able to tell by the side of the colour cut how light it's gone. So we just pinch a little bit more, because we need it to be quite a high contrast of colours. And what we're going to do is sort of model this on. What we're going to need to do though, to do that, is to thin it a little bit more. Some would say quite heavily. Okay. Great thing about using a brush to mix your colours, it mixes them properly. Okay, so we're just going to blow through all that old stuff. You can probably see it down here, it'll come through lighter. There we go, it's coming through now. And if we move you in again, you can see. So what we're going to do, centre of panels, and just pick them generally out, just to lighten things up. So unfortunately down in here we're not going to see much going on, but as we said, we know it does. Just like so, just to really give it that sort of grimy type of look to it all going on. Same with the side. This rear one we can play around a little bit with it and do some different areas. just to make it look nice and contrast. Just down here like that, just to give it a bit of a feel. Okay, and same in these. So just be quite random with it, so when you walk it round it lightens and darkens, so you've got some shading, some not. Okay, we'll just do this section down here. And there we go, you can probably see it working quite nicely in there. And when we pop, obviously the details of this all go together, it'll be right. Now I'm going to tip this back in here. Normally I don't, but we're getting a bit low on that colour. But you can see probably from the run, you can see the difference in colour as it was or wasn't. I tend to lighten all my paint anyway, just to give it that sort of scale effect, if you like. But there we go, that's the cockpit done like that now. So what we're going to do, let that totally dry off, clean out the airbrush, and then we'll just blow this through. And we're going to give this a quick wash with acrylic, just to give it a little bit more shading. So we just quick change of colour in the old airbrush. So it doesn't matter if you've got a little bit left behind, because we want it to be sort of dirty colour anyway. So we just take that there, blow that through. Get rid of that. Now I've already got some very, very weak black wash knocked up in here. So we'll just pop this in here, like so. It's coming through. Okay, then what we're going to do very lightly, just blowing it in there, and just flood it a little bit and let it sort of sink in. And then what you should be seeing now is that it'll actually start to give it that sort of shading, nice areas all around it. So we can just do the same with these as well, these side ones. One there. That one there. Same with through bulkhead. And the grime will stick around the bolts and things. Just running out of touch there. So we'll put a bit down here. So this wash here is literally just a very, very thin acrylic mix. A little bit more, much more. So it just makes it stick everywhere. So there we go. Now because that's got thinners all over it, we don't want to come in and take it and touch it too much, otherwise it's likely to come apart. So if we just dry this down very, very lightly, hopefully you can see there, it's given us a very nice grimy type of look to it all. So by the time we get in there now and sort of pick out all the bits we need to do in the different colours, obviously these plates and everything are going to be actually silver and things like that, and a little bit of dry brushing, it should really bring it all to life. Okay, so next up what we can do is spray the silver work, because obviously we've got blue down on this end, and obviously got metal work that's going to be in black and things like that. So what we can actually do now is do the silver, because obviously we're going to have to do dry brushing and everything else. Now there's lots of silvers on the market. Obviously one of the nice ones is these alclads, which are lacquer based, which you give them a bit of a mix up, give a fantastic finish. Trouble is with something like this is we want to come along with acrylics afterwards and do various washes and things like that. Alclad doesn't tend to like those type of things being sort of used afterwards, so I tend to keep those sort of for best. So my second choice, if I'm going to do anything sort of, you know, for a metallic type of finish, is the old Games Coloured Workshops. Now you've probably seen these for Warhammer and things like that. Great thing about these, they dry extremely fast, give a very, very smooth finish. Better than I'd actually say something like Tamiya ones and stuff like that, because the actual pigment, the fleck of the actual pigment, even when you turn them upside down and have a look, you can see it quite readily in the actual Tamiya's and other people's, no problem. Now if you're thinking along the lines of something like the Metal Guns ones, these are all enamel ones, but we want to keep with the acrylic. They give a great finish as well, but for acrylic I think it's really hard to beat these ones. Now I don't like to have them bright silver, so what I tend to do is do them in a sort of dull silver or a darker sort of silver. So for this one I'm using bulk gunmetal. Now a lot of people have trouble spraying these, but what I tend to find is, we just pop this down here, okay, what we actually have is a situation where these are a lot thicker than perhaps you're used to using. And the other thing as well is a very good mix. So what I tend to do, I'll come along with my colour cup first. Okay, pop the thinners, quite a bit of it. I'm probably going to go for 1 mil of thinners, okay. And we've got a medium-sized brush here. We're just going to dunk it in, load up a brush full, then straight in the colour cup. So it almost looks like dirty thinners in here rather than silver paint. And that way it sprays it very nicely, and you can build up the layers as you were spraying Alclad or something else, and it gives a great finish. But it needs to be quite thin. There's no point coming in here and doing it quite a thick coat, because it will spit, it will spat, and you're going to end up with lumps and bumps all over the place. So we'll just pop the lid down on that one. So just check our flow coming out. Okay, we've got a nice silver. Then all we're going to do is just go around and blow in this entire engine area with silver, and just keep it moving and keep building up the layers. Now for this I'm shooting this very high air pressure, 30 psi, okay, and just keep it going, because what we need to do is sort of come in, as I said, from all these different angles to sort of make sure we're getting in there. So we're going to come in from the backs, because what we're going to do, we're going to give this a wash afterwards to really make the veins all stand out and everything else. And the spray is quite heavily now. We've got a bit of paint on there, so we're just going to cut to air. So airbrush trigger all the way forward and just drying this off. Back in there, plenty of paint all the way around. Okay, when you're happy, have a look, make sure you're in there. The back. Okay, quite happy with how that's turned out. It's looking all okay. So what we're going to do, we'll leave that just to one side. Okay, so what we want to do now, you can tip this stuff here, if you like, straight back in here, because one thing you find with the Games Colour Workshop, they get quite thick. So, and also I'm thinning this just with normal Tamiya X20A acrylic paint. So what I'll do is I'll just blow that out. We'll clean that up properly in a moment. Okay, give this a bit of a shake up again. Now next we can move on in here. This is that cockpit. Now before we're going to go around and pick out all the details and all the bits and pieces all around here and everything else, I want to do the dry brushing. That way, sometimes perhaps when you've done something like we're going to do the little anti-freeze coat or whatever they put on this to stop it sort of freezing up and things like that on the oxygen bottles and things, so it doesn't go silver as well. So we're only silver doing anything that's sort of metally. Now for this, I like to use a sort of relatively soft brush, he says, just grabbing one here, and we'll just give this a quick clean out in some thinners, because this will soften the bristles as well. And there we go. Now you can use flat brushes and things like that, and they're great for doing dry brushing as well, but a good quality brush works every time. I used to say, to be honest, back years ago, use an old brush for this. Trouble using old brushes, the tips, and you tend to get it sort of splays out a bit, and they don't look very nice, and it doesn't give you a sort of too crisp. You can't get in there exactly where you want. Now for all dry brushing, if you're new to dry brushing, it's one of those things, it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, and I'll talk you through it. If you get a bit of rough kitchen towel, okay, then what we do, we load the brush up, not just the tips, but quite a bit all the way up, so you've got it pretty well loaded up. Okay, put it down and just roll it in one area, because we're going to go back and get this in a minute. Okay, and then just knock it all off and push down quite hard at the top of the brush. That way it stops it from soaking up there, and then once you're using it, it drags down and you get more paint come out. And you want it to basically all come off. So when you're making a normal pass, hardly anything comes off. So we do it on this side. You can see here we're just leaving a tiniest little bit of grey, and that's what we need. So bring you in here nice and close. So we come along, so we get in a situation where we're brushing around and nothing's really happening that much. But you might be able to see when you catch it in the light, all of a sudden you think, wait, hold on, it's working. Okay. And all we're going to do is going to pop around all these ribs and everywhere, just lightly brushing it over. And when you get into a situation where you've got perhaps cabling and things, you can spend a little bit more time. But what this will do, as it would in real life, you'll pick out anything with an edge. And what's happening in real life is obviously just scraping it off. So we're just going to pop all round. Excuse me. But by having very little on the brush, you can keep it going. And it's one of those things, less is more, definitely in a situation like this. Okay, and just run it everywhere, because in reality, obviously it would scrape off as you go around. Now, just in here, these tops of these rudder pedals, okay, are in fact aluminium. They're never painted, as far as I can tell. Okay, so we're just going to recreate that by popping aluminium right the way over. As you can see, I'm almost out of paint, but I'm not immediately jumping back to try and grab some more. I'm going to use what I get, so it gives a very nice effect down on them. So we want it to stretch, so just use as much as you possibly need. That way you don't have brush marks occurring and big blocks of paint. Let's do this other side. Like that. That's a good example of overdoing the paint. If you've got too much on the brush, before you know it, you've got too much everywhere. So I'll just knock a load of that off, and we'll take what we've got here. Okay, we'll just drag all that forward. And there we go, we're in a situation where we've got the done. So when we come along with other areas, such as the sides and things like that, we're going to do exactly the same. We're just going to run it around. See there again, too much on the brush. Make sure you're all off. But this is the great thing about having longer, nicer bristles, is you can get in to all those areas. And obviously we're going to go around afterwards and pick all these out and all the bits and pieces, but for the moment it'll give us that nice scuffed effect. And with that black wash we had going on, it should give us a very nice look to it all. So we're just going to go around, and then as I say, afterwards we'll pick out all the proper details. Now this dash area, we're going to paint black up here. We're going to do this instrument, which we'll talk about in a moment. But just for the moment, we're just going to go everywhere else. Okay, and we can get in there in a moment and start picking it all out. So we'll just do these. Just like so. So it gives us our nice sort of weathered look. And now we can get in there with some of the, so obviously we're going to be using blacks on some of these things and various different colours to really sort of bring it to life and detail it up. Okay, and there we go. So what we've actually done here, explain what we've done. This blue around this outer collar, this is XF18, just like that. Quite a good match, I must admit. I thought it was. Okay, all the HT leads coming off round here. You might be able to pick them out roughly, as you can see as they go round. That's all XF51, and obviously they go round and come off, and this collar going round. Now this collar, in sort of hindsight looking at it, is a little bit more metallic-y, but I'm going to dry brush it soon anyway, just to bring up some little details. And obviously these poles coming up here are actually just normal semi-gloss black, so it's X18. So we've used quite a few sort of Tamiya colours on that one, just to bring it all to life like that. So by using those three, and as I said, we use this gunbolt colour, we've sort of really detailed that engine up well. So what we want to do now is really just bring it all to life. Now, I'm being a bit of a naughty guy here because I'm doing this when it's still wet, and you should wait until it's dry, but I want to show you guys what we're doing. So in here I've got a bottle, and I've just got some enamel, so obviously oil based, flat black with thinners. Now it's quite thin, and as I said, normally you shouldn't put one on the other until they're totally dry, but what we do, we come along like this, you see, and we're just going to touch it in the veins to make them all stand out. Now the thing is, what you don't want to do, because obviously we're using enamels, it will eat through acrylic almost instantly, so don't touch it around too much, but you might be able to see. So we've done it on there, so what we do, come along with a drop of it, okay, and just run it through, and you'll probably see it goes all oily and nicely into those ones just like that. So if I just show you on this one here, so just come along with it, alright, just come in and just touch it in there, and you should be fine with it. So if we do this one over here to show you down in here, okay, just touch him in, run it round, okay, and this last one round here, okay, and you see it, and it gives you that lovely engine type of colour. But as I said, it's one of those things, if you hang around a bit too long on it, it tends to eat its way through and everything else. So literally just touch it on, let it flow round, and then absolutely leave it to it. Okay, so we just got these last few here, you probably see down here. Get the camera to cut in, there we go. So we got some on the go here, so we just do this pot just to give it a touch more, okay. And it gives it that nice, lovely, oily effect to it. So we're just popping around to those little areas where we haven't got any in yet. Okay, and immediately, I hope you can see, it gives it that real nice look to the engine. Something like that. Okay, so when you zoom right in close on it, when you catch it on the light and everything, it makes these veins all stand out absolutely lovely. And this is the difference between when you're using this one, having an engine that's made of resin and obviously that very fine detail blade, or using something that obviously, you know, is from the box and everything else. So we just got to go around and pop them on the tops as well. Okay, so we just very lightly drizzle these around just by going round and touching them in. It will give us that nice engine look. But it's great to do it with enamels because enamels flow a lot better and gives us this lovely sort of colours and everything else to it that you wouldn't necessarily get if we'd done this certainly on something like our Pro Modelers wash. It's too thick for this type of job. Okay, so know your limitations, as they say, and this is definitely one of them. This is best for this type of thing. But all we do is just pop round everywhere, and this oil, that's great because it just gives it that oily look to the engine as we go around, and when it dries it should really bring it together. But we hope you agree, with all that wiring that we've been doing in here, it's really giving it a different look to it, and it's giving it that nice sort of real sort of, I don't know, weathered, worn, used look in the engine. And by the time we go around and do a little bit of more oil washes around this top area around here, when this is totally dry, it will give it that nice look. So by weathering it, really the same as we weather the rest of the aircraft, the same as we do the cockpit, you know, obviously with dry brushing, with washes and everything, it really makes the detail come to life. But I hope you agree, that engine's looking absolutely great. Okay, so the next thing we can do, we can work on this seat and actually getting the seat together and the bits and pieces. Now the thing is, obviously there's harnesses. You usually get two different types of sort of seating. You can buy an aftermarket replacement that has sort of moulded in harnesses, and basically all they are is what they say. They're moulded in at the same time that the resin part is cast. It's cast in with all the harnesses and the details in. Now there's fors and against for both of these. For having them moulded in, as obviously they're all there pre-built, all you have to do is paint them. Against them is obviously they are stuck to the actual thing, there's no movement, you can't change them, and what you see is what you're going to get. With these, what we can actually do is make up these harnesses out of photo etch parts, which are these tiny bits down here. Okay, add them to the seat, and then if you wanted to, you can bend them as you would in real life to actually perhaps have hanging them over the sides of the seat, over the consoles, or in this case what we're going to do a bit later on is have them hanging out over the sides of the actual cockpit, so it looks like it's ready to jump in and go, and bits like that. The drawback to actually using photo etch parts is normally they're made out of multiple parts. They're normally extremely tiny, very, very fiddly to put together, and 9 out of 10, if you're anything like me, you're going to lose a couple along the way. Quite a handy thing to have is a pair of these. Now these are Tamiya bending pliers, and the great thing about these, you've got a nice square flat blade and you can just pop things in, bite it together, and you're not going to leave crimp marks and things like that if you'd had a normal pair of pliers or something, because they are totally smooth on the inside. Okay, not cheap, but quite a handy investment to have if you do bits of photo etch like I tend to do here. So you can just sort of grab it, hold it, twist it. Another handy thing to have is a pair of spring-loaded tweezers. Now these, because they'll hold on to the part you're dealing with, you can hold it in there, thread things through and then bend it, so you're not using, you know, trying to grab it with your fingers and things like that. So if we just run through, when you look at the instructions, they always look a bit daunted because they're going to look something like this, okay? And it shows you a side-on view for how the bends go. Normally, like down here, we've got 2 sets, and how it's going to fit to the seat. And eventually, you should end up looking like something like this. Don't be too worried. Just take your time and work your way through. Have a look at the parts. Obviously, the photo etch fret that you'll see just here has got the numbers on as they're numbered here. If it doesn't seem to make sense, double check it. You know, sometimes you might have one of these, they look very similar but they're slightly different in length and everything else. Remember, because you can bend these photo etch parts for these harnesses, you can bend them to any length you want. So if you want to shorten them or lengthen them, you can do it just as you would in real life. So when you're cutting them out, I tend to use a pair of scissors and just nip out the actual bits you need and just pop around it like that. I know some people, you can put it down, you can get it like a chisel and push down and pop it in. If you're doing that, make sure you do it on a hard surface, not on a cutting mat, because when you push down you'll curve it, and then obviously it makes things a little bit harder to sort of line up and bits like that. So down here, if we bring you in nice and close, I can just show you the start of it. Okay, so actually what we've got on the go here, you might be able to see we've got various parts. There's 2 parts there, but some of them is said absolutely tiny, like this one just down here. Okay, so what we're going to do, we've just got a long one is the one that's going to be, if you like, the shoulder harness, which is this one, is going to go over the back. Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to put a right angle in it. One end has got stitching on it, this end up here, so all we can do, pop it in here and just bend it over. Okay. And then same with the other side. Now the reason for doing this hit like this is so when we put things on it, they don't just slide straight off. Now there is left and rights to these and everything else, so make sure you have them all the right way round. And to be honest, I've already made a setup which I'll show you in a moment, but we just need that to show us our left and rights. Okay, so that one is there, so this is a right. So we've got our longer one for the moment, so what we're going to do is, if you wet your finger, you can get the photo etch part to stick on it like this. Okay, this is where your spring-loaded tweezers come in, because you can hold them. He said, I'm trying to do this. You can hold the shorter section, which is the bit we want, in the pliers just on the end like this. Now I know this is very fiddly to see, so I'll just sort of outline what I'm doing. Okay, so we have this one on here. Then we have this bit, so we want it to sort of just go in here, and then obviously just slide it through the hole. And in fact this one will come in from the back. Okay, once you got it through, just bend it slightly. You can release then from the pliers. Okay, slide it to the length you want it. Okay, and we just bend it up. Okay, and then pinch together, and then come along with your tool and fold that in. Okay, so we've got this end one now on the end here. Okay, and then we just take this little guy here, and we just take your time, adding part at a time. You can get them through. Doing the buckles. Now you could use a little bit of super glue to hold these in place, but sometimes a little bit of PVA glue is better. or as I'll show you in a minute, you can paint them into position. Okay, now we've got a little loop at the top, but we'll worry about that one in a moment. So here's this one done. So we've already got one painted up already. It's done just here. So what we've used is a little bit of XF59 here. Okay, and we've got that in there. It's all a little bit tan at the moment, so we need to go around and pick out the silver afterwards, but that gives us our harness. And this then will go onto our seat, which then we can weather up once we've got the harnesses on, the bits and pieces. Use a little bit of bar just at the back here, held in with super glue, and then eventually what will happen is that this will sit onto our resin piece just like so in here with the harnesses hanging over the back, and then we can really get the engine together. So that's the harnesses all done now and in. As I say, we get them on and then we can work on the fibre optics for putting together the actual cockpit itself.